Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the presentation. Accessibility is a completely different topic from the one we have listened before in some cases, but I think it's a very important one for the publishing industry in the next year. And I believe is one of the main innovation trends in the publishing industry right now. I think, as Luis explained, all publishers should be aware of what accessibility means, but not only publisher. I have a slide behind me, because what is really relevant with the new legislation and the technological innovation is that it is possible to create a fully accessible digital ecosystem. But to do this, every actor in the value chain should play its role. So it's not only a problem of publisher, but it's something that everyone in the value chain should be considering in their strategy for the next year. There are publishers, and there are distributors, there are aggregators, online store, libraries, and service providers, like the one who make e-commerce website or paying system, but also all the reading application and solution, because the end user should be able to buy a book, to loan a book, to read a book as any other reader, so without any distinction. So today we have two persons who are really very involved in this activity, and we have Paolo Casarini, who is ICT head of the Mulino Publishing House, who will explain the point of view of a publisher, but not only a publisher and a content aggregator and the platform. And on the other side, Adrien Gardeur, who is head of product at the Mark, will explain the relevance of displaying and showing metadata to the end user. That are two main topics in this moment in the publishing industry for accessibility. Please, Paolo, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Hi, my name is Paolo Casarini. I work for Mulino Publishing House, a leading academic publisher in Italy. And I'm a computer scientist, and I'm in charge of the digital development, software development of our digital platform. But I'm not here today to talk about technical details. My presentation is focused on why we have chosen to produce accessible digital products and platforms before it becomes mandatory by law in 2025. The path we have taken to transform our production change to achieve this objective. Some very important discoveries we have made along the way. I would like to make a brief introduction to my company. Mulino Publishing House is an academic publisher founded in 1954, which now publish 73 journals and about 300 new titles each year, mainly in humanities, economics, and social sciences. Our focus is on academic market, and we have developed 3 different platforms to deliver our content. Since 2013, we consider accessibility also important for our books, and we have promptly embraced Fondazione Lia initiative, asking them to check some of our books and to include them in the list of accessible Italian books. So our platform, the first platform we developed was a Rivista Web, which now houses the most authoritative Italian collection of journals, humanities and social sciences. The platform is dedicated to universities and private and public institutions, and currently offer articles from 80 journals. Our second platform is Darwin Books, for monographs mainly, where we deliver publication dedicated mainly to researchers and universities. the content is streamed online on the web. Finally, starting from 2013, we decided to create a brand new platform, an e-learning platform called Pandora Campus. It was designed to give students, teachers, and other academic professionals digital access to our textbooks. It allowed to students and teachers to prepare the exams, accessing textbooks, online materials, doing exercise, and interacting with each other. So the starting point for us, all our platforms are open to other publishers and has been designed with the content accessibility in mind. However, our platform were not designed with navigation technology in mind for print impaired people. So people suffering from blindness or other vision challenging conditions were unable to access the online content. Unfortunately, then, at the moment in Italy, there isn't any public funding available to make editorial digital products available. So, why accessibility? As a leading academic publisher in Italy, we play a pivotal role in society in providing knowledge to students and faculties, and we could make game-changing differences for imprint people's life. Quite apart from complying with the international laws, such as the European Accessibility Act, we have a moral duty to provide everyone with access to knowledge by removing all possible barriers and leveling the playing field for all. So in Molino, we have invested a lot of time, resources, and capital in redesigning our platform and our product so they are completely accessible, doing our part in making education accessible to all. Today, I would like to tell you about some beautiful experiences we had working on accessibility. In fact, with the help and professional advice of Fondazione Lia and X experts, we have transformed 3 digital platforms with a lot of content and feature in 3 accessible digital platforms with the same content and even more features. We started the journey working on the most recent of our platform, Pandora Campus, and then we were able to apply what we have learned to other platforms in a seamlessly effortless fashion. Accessibility, we understand, is not only a matter of technology. Each step in a production change should be coordinating in conjunction with other steps in other production change. So we worked on the awareness and education for sales and editorial manager, teaching and training for traditional and digital editors, testing and teaching for digital staff, and training and development for software developers. As I said before, along the way, we found a great companion, Fondazione Lia, which shares our philosophical views and has provided us 3 fundamental practical lessons. First, accessibility doesn't only pose a technical challenge. Everybody on the editorial production change needs to know which their responsibilities are and what they have to foresee and to avoid. Second, standards are a key consideration in accessibility. And following standards with the right techniques is like superpower for developers. If you do the right thing for accessibility, you are building better software for all. Third, the importance of gaining experience as to how printing person manages digital materials, what kind of tools they use, and what challenges they face in accessing digital content. Beyond all these things, I should admit that the greatest reward is to receive good feedbacks, thanks and endorsement like this quote, Pandora Campus è fantastico. You would be understandably mistaken if you thought this was a slogan created by my marketing department, but in fact is the exclamation from a blind young girl with a very few computer skills when she found one of her university books on Pandora Campus, and she succeeded to study it in her mobile phone. So what's next? Molino's platforms are now accessible and are the most widely used open platform in Italian academic market. We are market leader in this field. We are partnered with the most Italian university, and we distribute titles from the most important publisher. But our mission is not complete. Accessibility is the new frontier for me in digital publishing, and there is still a lot of work to be done. This conference gives us the opportunity to share our experience, learn from other publishers, and meet potential partners, and grow together on our journey to provide the ultimate digital experience for our readers, students, teachers, and professionals alike. So, thank you. It's enough.
Thank you very much, Paolo. I think that what is clear from this presentation is that embracing accessibility means embracing a culture, not only technical stuff. For example, you need to train, as Paolo explained, also the commercial people and the customer services, because if you have a person with disability, you should be able to answer their question in the same way you answer to everybody. And sometimes also people with disability are not so aware, and sometimes are really surprised to see that the platform is fully accessible, and maybe they have some question on that. So I think this is really, really important. Also, end users need to know what is accessible and what not, and need to have a clear idea of what is available from them and the feature that the platform or a book have, because the paradigm shift is also that people don't ask to produce a special edition just for them in a special version, but they need to access the same book as everybody, and they need also to have some commercial activity, because they may have to pay for a subscription, or they need to have to pay for a book, or they need to have a service through a library. So to know which are the characteristics of a platform or a book is really, really important. And so I leave the floor to Javier, who is an expert in this field. Thank you.
Hello. So I'm going to do something that's a little bit new, and I'm not sure it's been done before, so hopefully I'm the first. It's to give you a bit of an overview of the state of things. So we keep hearing about accessibility, it's coming, 2025, EU Accessibility Act. We hear a lot about production, but we don't really know what's the situation. Like, are we in a good situation? Are we in a bad place? And we kind of have to do that market by market. Since I'm in Madrid, I decided to take data from Spain, but I could have done the same with other countries. So I'm going to try to give you a bit of an overview of, is it that bad, or is it better than we think in Spain? So just talking a bit about the mark. So why do we care so much about accessibility, and why do we think we have to spend so much time and energy on that? We have a pretty simple mission statement. We connect people and creators across the world so culture can easily thrive everywhere. But the problem when you want to connect people is that the content that you have is not necessarily going to be accessible to everyone if you don't care about accessibility. So part of connecting with people is making sure that you can actually provide content that everyone will be able to use. And I think there's always this bit of division that we create in our mind that, this is only for part of the population. And I think that's wrong. I think a lot of accessibility metadata is actually useful for everyone. And that's going to be a bit of the second goal of that presentation, if I can say so. So looking at that, so we've seen clear alignment. And another thing we've noticed pretty easily at the Mark is that we actually do a whole lot. People know us for distribution, but we do reading apps, we do open source, we operate libraries, so we do a whole lot. And although our mission is to distribute and make sure that the entire ecosystem can use those metadata, we felt that it was quite interesting to use our own ecosystem as a lab to see, is it working? Can we communicate these metadata even within the company before we try to push it to everyone else? And that was something we kind of started about 2 years ago. So just to give you a quick overview of all the things we do internally that matters to us, but also matters to everyone in industry. So we do distribution. That's something we're known for. For example, we operate Libranda here in Spain. We also do retail, for example, with publishers. And it's very important for people that might want to spend money on books to know whether the content is going to be accessible or not. We also have a marketplace for libraries. So this could become very, very quickly a decision for libraries. Do I buy a book? Is it accessible? So we have a few libraries that are already considering only buying accessible books in the next 2 years. So we have to give them that information. We also operate Portal for public libraries, Portal for schools, and here it's pretty obvious. As a patron from a library, I want to know whether I'm going to be able to use that content. And we also do reading apps. So people tend to forget, we mostly talk about reading applications in the context of accessibility features, but even before you borrow, before you buy a book, you need to know about the accessibility of the content. So it's also relevant in that context. So when we started at work, we were kind of exploring, and we learned a few things pretty quickly along the way. So one thing that we learned very, very quickly is that there's a big mismatch, a disconnect between production, which is EPUB, and distribution, which is mostly Onyx. They are different terms. They are missing terms. The mapping between the two is inconsistent. So we had to create new mappings, and hopefully we have good discussions and a good connection with people at Editor, Chris, for example. So we managed to send a lot of information back, but the mismatch is a big, big problem because you might be producing accessible content, but because of this mismatch, people never receive the information. They don't know your content is accessible at all. So I have a few good news about that around the end of the presentation, but yeah, that was the big thing we realized very, very quickly. Another thing we realized is even though we made it possible for publishers to provide us with accessibility metadata, let's say it is very, very complicated. Like, what is this Onyx code? What is this accessibility features, whatever? So even though we allow publishers to provide us with this information, well, they don't understand what the metadata stands for. It's very, very difficult for them to work with this. And the end result is we end up with very, very little metadata circulating in Onyx feeds. And little data in Onyx feeds means that retailers, libraries, they don't know anything about the accessibility of your books, which is a major problem. It's good to have accessible production, but then if people don't know that your content is accessible, well, you've kind of missed the point. So when we realized that issue, we started thinking, what about EPUB files? Like, is it any better? Could we do something with EPUB files? Which is something we don't do very often in distribution. In distribution, we tend to think of EPUB as the place where you have crappy metadata. Don't look into those EPUB files. Usually, it's not so good. The cover is not going to be the right one. The title is not necessarily the right one. So usually, we're like, yeah, we trust the publisher more, and Onyx is the truth, and EPUB is a bit of an afterthought. But we had a feeling that this time around, things would be a little bit different with accessibility, because there's a mandate on the production side to produce accessible content. So what we did is we created a tool based on the Readm toolkit. So Readm is technology mostly for building reading application. But the kind of things you do when you build reading apps is very similar to the kind of need we had here. So what we did is we enhanced this open source code, and we created an utility out of this to actually do two things: extract and infer metadata. So those are two separate things, and you're going to see the kind of difference it makes a bit afterwards. So a few concepts with this utility. First of all, you don't need to know anything about EPUB. So EPUB has already evolved quite a lot over the years. EPUB 2, 2.1, 3, 3.1, there's a new one out there. And the way you express metadata in EPUB has changed. So it's not always so easy to work with EPUB metadata. Like the backlist titles have one set of metadata, the new one has another set. And so we felt that it was very necessary to abstract this all away and provide it in a consistent way. And so you don't need to know about EPUB, you can just get the metadata easily. Another thing we felt that was quite important is, yes, we want to extract accessibility metadata, but there's actually an opportunity to extract all metadata and maybe do more in distribution that we've done before. So in the context of accessibility, metadata is interesting, but other things are also interesting. Another thing we've been also doing, and it's completely optional in this utility, is that we've decided that for a very conservative set of metadata, we can actually infer information. Even though information is not explicitly present in the file, you can infer some of it. It's quite minimal, but it's better than nothing. And also, we know that the table of content, the page list, the index, all those things are useful and are worth extracting. So what does it, So what does it look like for the results in Spain? So you can guess from the picture that it's not so good, I guess. So even though I don't need to press that, the tension is building up. So we've looked at 166,000 publications in EPUB. So it's not exhaustive, but it's a pretty good set. It's a good starting point. And here are actually the number of publications with accessibility metadata. Drum roll. So, okay. So in Onyx, we only found information for 76 publications, 0.04% of what we've explored. In EPUB, it's a little bit better, 5,000, 3.4%. But when we inferred metadata, and I insist, this is a very limited set of metadata, we could infer minimal metadata for almost every publication. And what does this mean for the Accessibility Act? Well, the bad news is that we only detected 11 publications that are compliant with the EU Accessibility Act. One point that is important to say here, it doesn't mean that there are 11 files that are compliant. It means there are 11 publications that declare themselves as compliant. I'm sure there's a lot more than that, but if we don't have the metadata, well, who can say if they're compliant or not? So why do we care about that? So I've already mentioned this a bit, but rather than always using technical words like WCAG, AA, or that kind of thing, we've really start thinking about accessibility metadata as something that is actually built within the core experience of reading ebooks, because a lot of those metadata apply to everyone. So this has really been the core concept for us. One very easy, and everyone knows about that in this room, I'm sure. So one of the core promise, I would say, of ebooks is I can change the font, I can change the layout. If I'm a dyslexic reader and I need a different font, or I need to change the spacing, people expect to do that. They take it. We kind of take it for granted that we can do that. But the reality is that not all ebooks allow you to do that. And people don't necessarily know about the technical terms, so they want to know if they're going to be able to actually do that when they buy or borrow a book. So we've really thought about those things as questions. Can I change the text and layout? Question that anyone in this room can ask. So one problem we face is there's no way of sending that information in Onyx. It sounds extremely basic, but with the current codeless in Onyx, you cannot send that information. And then another thing we've quickly realized is that it's very difficult to infer that information. There is something we can infer. This one is not so easy. So what do the numbers actually look like? Only 200 EPUB actually provide information, metadata about that. So 0.12%. The reality is that it's probably supported by most EPUB. If you exclude fixed layout documents, it's probably 99 point something EPUB that do support that, but only 0.12% provide that information. And since you cannot send that information in Onyx, it means that no one gets that information if they don't get the file. So that's a big problem. Another thing that is pretty common that, once again, everyone can use is a table of contents. If I'm reading, I don't know, a technical book or even just short stories, I might want to skip somewhere in the publication. So that is also something we kind of take for granted and expect to have everywhere. That's another good question. Can I navigate using a table of contents? This one is supported everywhere, so we have the ability to easily express that. But is it documented? So what we see for that one, the clicker is not helping, is that in Onyx, only 71 publications had that information in Spain, 0.04%. Slightly better in EPUB, but barely, a few hundreds. But if we can infer that from the content in EPUB, we see that almost every publication has this. So why don't we have this information documented in EPUB? So yeah, this is something we have everywhere, but that's documented nowhere. So kind of a big issue. Another thing that is also very useful, so let's say I've changed my font. I've changed the experience so that it's easier for me to read as a dyslexic reader. We know that a lot of readers like to read and like to listen at the same time. We've heard a lot about audio earlier today, but there's a very good reason for a good part of the audience either to listen and read at the same time, or to just go for a run and listen to an ebook. So can I listen to an ebook? Another good question. So this is not supported in Onyx either. Not supported yet. Hopefully it'll change soonish. The emoji isn't working this time around. Is it documented in EPUB? So the situation for this is a bit better than what we've seen before. There are a few thousand EPUB in the market, so 3.2% that have this information. And if you also add what we can infer on top of that, it means we have between 13 and 14% of publication where we can provide that information to people. So yeah, it can be inferred, but only in certain cases. It's probably a lot more than that can support it. And the last question we ask ourselves is, can I share a page number with a precondition? So we have use cases, for example, in classes where there are some students reading an ebook, and some students reading a print book. And then when the teachers say, go to page 20, they all need to go to the same page. It cannot be, page 25 of this edition, or that doesn't work. Or with a friend, you might want to share something. So this is also supported in Onyx EPUB. Is it documented? So what we see with this one is that it's barely documented in EPUB, not documented in Onyx at all.
Adrien,
yeah.
sorry, we are out of time.
OK, sorry. But we can infer it from a percentage of files. Jumping ahead. So I just presented the metadata for an outlook for Spain. But we actually have data for France, we have data for Italy, we have data for Canada, we have data for the US. And our intent is to publish that data probably in September and try to do a bit of an annual report to see, is it getting better every year? Are we progressing? So we think there's a lot of value in doing that. And we don't have data from everywhere, but we'll try to cover as much internationally as possible. And last slide. Sorry about that. So we have a few things coming our way. So we know that Editor is going to be publishing a new code list. So hopefully the coverage for Onyx is going to be better, and we're going to be able to distribute more metadata. We're looking into sending the information we've extracted and inferred also in Onyx. I've heard very recently that, for example, Penguin Random House is starting to do that in the US. So we're going to be doing that as well. And moving beyond that, we're really thinking about how can we grade publications to make it easy to understand where you stand, and also starting to provide recommendation on how you can improve those ratings. And yeah, last but most important things, we don't want to keep things as it is. So we intend to push more and more tools and services for providing more enhancement to those metadata and files.
Thank you very much. Just an information to let you know, we as Fondazione Lia have a catalog of 30,000, of more than 30,000 titles that has been checked as accessible for 76 Italian publishers. And all these books have metadata that are sent in many different ways. So it's not just this situation, but what we do is to send, for example, to the Books in Print catalog, and we have the LIA catalog that is another very important piece, because we are speaking about the European Accessibility Act, but there is another legislation that is the Marrakesh Treaty, and I believe that these two legislations are in some kind two different aspects. So the specialist organization could also benefit of knowing that there is a catalog of fully accessible ebooks, because so they don't need to redo what is already available, and they maybe concentrate on the more complex book and the educational books or the email description and so on. So I think there are many different reasons why publishers should be considering this aspect. And just last information, we as Fondazione Lia, that is an organization created by the Italian Publishing Association and the Italian Blind Union, will organize on Friday 1 day of focus on accessibility. That is the accessibility camp. It will be more interactive, so we can share and discuss in a more informal way. So if you have some curiosity, if you are not so aware of what accessibility means, you are all welcome to come on Friday, even if you are not registered yet. So if you are interested, please keep in touch, and we will be more than happy to welcome you. Thank you very much for the opportunity, and I hope you embrace accessibility very soon. Thank you.